Hey y'all, funny intro bonus. So I just finished this entire video about 6.5 hours into the video editing and making process. Look at what I noticed. Why my audio sounds so weird, because my mic was backwards the whole time. So we're doing this again. I'm starting it over. It's just not gonna be as good as the first one was. Hey y'all, how you doing today? So surprisingly, one of the questions I get asked more often than not is how to build Izanami. There's a lot of people coming into the game, and Izanami is a great choice to build as a carry. So how do you build an Izanami? Well, I have Izanami as my main character for the first 25 chapters of the game. So while I haven't quite reached to endgame where people say she falls off, I can greatly attest to her usefulness in the beginning of the game and mid-game. So what I'm going to do is do a complete breakdown of all of her skills and abilities, where they're good, where they're bad, and how you can interchangeably select her equipments. And notice how she just floated up away from the sky. If you've never seen that animation before, please like the video and subscribe. But without wasting too much of your time, let's just jump into it, starting with her kit. We have a passive here. Izanami's spirit forms a protective aura around her, reducing her damage taken by 10%. Additionally, each wandering ghost around her further reduces her damage taken by 4%. Izanami can obtain a maximum of 5 ghosts. And of course, leveling this up will allow her to obtain more maximum ghosts, which in turn will increase her survivability whenever this is maxed. It still increases her survivability whenever it isn't maxed, it's just more effective when it is. Next, we have Life Drain, which is an active skill. Izanami marks a new enemy dealing 75% damage every half second for a second and a half. This recovers 100% of the total damage dealt. Now this is an active skill that's very good for increasing her survivability as well. While we already have damage reduction, now we're looking at lifesteal, so we can recover some of that health that we've lost. Sphincter Impact is going to deal damage directly in front of her. This is an area of effect cone shape that you want to make sure the enemy is inside so that they receive the damage from this. Whenever you level up her weapon, it will also increase the souls that she acquires whenever she uses that skill, making it easier to get her back to maximum souls. And her ultimate, Breath of the Dead. Izanami releases half of her wandering souls for 10 seconds, dealing damage to 60% of her attack, plus the number of ghosts released, times 3% of her attack per second to individual targets. Whenever all of this is completely maxed, she can deal 70% of her attack per second, and then having 10 ghosts will give her another 30%. So essentially at maximum it deals 100% attack per second. Also importantly enough, at level 2 she will additionally gain 50% lifesteal, which further increases her survivability. So what we can gather from looking at her kit right here is that she has a lot of area of effect damage over time that increases her survivability. Now whenever we awaken her lamp, we're going to gain a few more bonuses to our abilities as well. How her ultimate is an area of effect, some people might argue that it is less effective against a single target like a boss. Well, in this case, upgrading her weapon skill makes her ultimate deal more damage for however many less units are on the field. Meaning, if she's just fighting a singular boss, she can do up to 48% more damage with her ultimate with this weapon skill. Plus, this allows you to collect an extra wandering ghost when using Sphincter Impact. Yes, I know it's Spectre Impact. Another important thing to note is that we have crit damage available to us on this weapon, which is not available to everybody else. So this is 40% or 42% more damage that we are doing than somebody who doesn't have crit damage would be able to do. Okay, now that we've gotten through the brunt of what her abilities and weapons do, then let's get into her divinities and equipments. You can swap divinities out interchangeably, so what I'm going to do is go over each of them and tell you the strengths and weaknesses, and I'm not going to tell you exactly which 3 to put at all times because it can change from time to time. Starting with Phantom, this divinity allows healing to not be reduced. While this does only cost 1 divinity node, so it's not too much of an investment into your divinity skill slots, you have to take note that there is not a lot of healing reduction in the game. And while it is possible that your healing does get reduced and this causes you to lose a fight, you can just as easily take it off at that point, so I wouldn't recommend using it a lot. But if you are getting your healing reduced, then go ahead and pop it on there and you should be fine. Engulf is after each of the first 2 ultimates, the hero gains a buff which increases lifesteal by 12%. Now this is cool for very long-lasting fights. The question is, are you going to use your ultimate 2 times? Because if you want the maximum effectiveness from this, you're going to have to cast your ultimate 2 times, which most of the time the fight will be over at that point. She does also already come with a hefty amount of lifesteal, so if adding a little bit of lifesteal is going to be helpful, then it's going to be helpful, but if you're not dying, then this is useless. Energy field is complicated because it depends on who is on your team. The ally hero with the highest combat power is immune to the first lethal damage, and they gain a shield equal to 30% of Izanami's health. Now, this greatly depends on your team. If the ally with the highest combat power is a tank, they're probably not going to be dying that quickly, and you won't have to worry about this. Or if it's someone like Artemis and a squishy, then it could be very useful. It just depends on who you're using. But without a doubt, the 3 nodes required to use this is a hefty cost, so if you're going to use it, it needs to be a main part of your build. Symbiosis is a simple beginning of the battle 15% shield. It's not great, but it's just enough to save you in the beginning of the match if you are being heavily focused. Now, if you're not dying, again, this is useless, so you will need to swap it out interchangeably whenever you need to survive and whenever you need to deal more damage. Water Drop reduces crit damage taken by 35%. This is another situational divinity that means if you're not being crit or if you are not actively dying whenever you do not have this on, then you don't need it. But in a situation where you are being tag teamed by a bunch of enemies that are critting you a lot, then this will be great to help mitigate that damage. Savvy increases the damage dealt from active skills by 25%. This is a 3 divinity cost. This costs 3 nodes, which is a huge investment. But this is the first way we've seen to increase our damage so far, thus making it very valuable. Active skills are only a portion of Izanami's damage. She also deals damage from her ultimate and from auto attacks, but active skills can be a big portion of damage, and combining it with certain equipments, that could be a good choice. One thing's for sure, if you want to get the highest damage possible, you will need to take this one. Now, Torment increases damage dealt to enemies with a debuff on them by 12%. This only costs 1 node, and her active that puts the damage over time for lifesteal on the enemy can technically be counted as a debuff. There's a lot of allies that can put debuffs on the enemy as well, so if the enemy is going to be debuffed, 12% extra damage is a little bit of damage, but it does add up, and we can combine that with Savvy to deal more damage than we could possibly deal using any of the first ones we saw. The next 2 are energy related, which are situational, so I'll tell you the situation to use both of them. Divine Fire increases energy by 2 every second. This energy does not decrease. Collective Fervor allows an ally to increase your energy as well. For every ally that uses their ultimate, it restores 30 energy to them and to Izanami. So if Izanami is your 100% carry, like she's 40 levels higher than everyone else on your team, you're going to want to use Divine Fire because dead allies are not going to be helping you at all. This can help you get your ultimate because sometimes getting that first ultimate is all it takes to beat the stage, versus if your team was relatively the same level in effectiveness, then this would be the better choice because all of your allies casting their ultimates together is going to add up to a lot more than just 2 every second. But you also have to remember that the seconds tick away quite fast in this game, so Divine Fire is a decent way to get some energy on Izanami. A big part of my strategy that has seen so much success through these first few chapters with Izanami is the fact that she can be just as much of a tank as she can be a carry, so that's why you see these 3 divinity skills that I've been using to try and help keep her on the stage as long as possible, because she is definitely by far pulling the most weight on my entire team. But at any point, I could swap these out. I'm not married to any divinity skill as the best one. You need to be smart about which ones you're using depending on what fight you're doing. Like if my healing is being reduced, then I'm going to take Phantom, and so on and so on. If I need energy, I'm going to take Divine Fire, and you're just going to have to be malleable with that. And whenever it comes to the gear we're putting on our Izanami, the artifacts are more definitive than the runes, so I'll go over the artifacts that you should use real quickly, and then we can talk about the runes in a little bit more detail. The Axe of Pangu is a choice that you can take to increase the damage that your Izanami deals, but it increases the damage of your auto attacks, which is a very small portion of Izanami's damage, so I wouldn't really pick this over the other damage options that we have. Now, the staff has actually been buffed to work even better with Izanami than it normally does. It deals extra damage to enemies with less than 50% health, but now it deals extra damage to bosses regardless of their health percentage. We already went over how with her weapon skill, we will be dealing increased damage to single target bosses with our ultimate, so combining that with this gives us a humongous damage boost to bosses, and it is also helpful when fighting groups, because whenever you get your ultimate off, it is about at that point where the enemy will start having less than half of their health, and you can really just rake in a victory with that ultimate. Versus our next damage option, which is going to be the Chakra. This increases damage of our ultimate ability, but you have to take note that her ultimate isn't the only way that your Izanami is dealing damage. She is also technically getting some damage from auto attacks and getting a hefty portion of damage from active skills, so only increasing the effectiveness of the ultimate seems like kind of a waste. And the last damagey option you could choose from is going to be this Magatama, so this increases the effectiveness of her active skills, and it can possibly decrease their cooldowns and make her spam them. So if she's spamming the lifesteal, that'll be better for increasing her effectiveness and tankiness, and if she's spamming the wave, she accumulates ghosts faster, which is good for her ultimate. It would be a toss-up between the Magatama and the staff if you were using the air runes, but if you're not using air runes, then I would strongly recommend to take the staff. Excalibur is in no way a good option. This is really a support item. It should be on somebody who doesn't really have too much use for artifacts, so it would not be good for Izanami because there are a lot of artifacts that are very helpful for Izanami's kit. And whenever it comes to damage mitigation, we have a few options as well, but they're all useful in different situations, and they combo with different runes, so let me just go over them and let me say that they are all effective, but what runes you're using will depend on which artifact you need to survive that stage. So let's just go ahead and talk about one of the combinations while we move on to the Earth Runes. Earth Runes can be very good for Izanami to help maintain her stability on the stage long enough to get that ultimate. A lot of the time, getting the ultimate is the difference between beating the stage and losing, and surviving long enough to get that ultimate can be a challenge. Earth Runes make it possible for you to survive a lot longer in the first 10 seconds of the match, which sometimes those first 10 seconds are all it takes to get that ultimate off. Thor's Hammer will complement this fact in the fact that if there are a lot of enemies attacking you, you have more chances to decrease their attack speed, because whenever an opponent hits Izanami, it has a chance to reduce their attack speed for only a second and a half, which is not a lot of time until you start considering that if there are 5 enemies attacking your Izanami, it can stack up very quickly. Being able to RNG reset fights as many times as you want, Thor's Hammer is a good option for trying to get the best possible outcome when dealing with a lot of enemies. So whenever we need to start looking at more survivability options, we can actually delve into light runes as well. They only recover a small amount of health per second, but once you get these runes maxed, it's slightly under 2% health every second maximum that you recover, and that can actually add up very fast because the seconds tick away so quickly in the middle of a battle. In addition to the fact that whenever her health falls below 50%, all health restoration effects will be increased by 35%, making her almost impossible to take down in the middle of an ultimate if she has that off. In a severe case where you have a long fight ahead of you where you will probably be fighting all the way to the end of the timer and you need Izanami to survive the entire time, I would take those light runes with this artifact, the Aegis Shield, which blocks damage with a percentage of the time, 19% at Legendary level 5. This is another good artifact for trying to mitigate a damage that is ending your fight too quickly. You can definitely stay on the field a lot longer with this Aegis, and you're going to have to swap it out interchangeably with Thor's Hammer depending on the enemy you're fighting. And lastly, let's talk about the Scarab badge and how that works interchangeably with a forest set and with a dark set. If all you need to win the battle is to get your ultimate off with Izanami, having a full set that restores 150 energy at the beginning of the battle is going to get your ultimate faster than you would a dark set, as well as your Izanami can be stunned, which can completely ruin your ultimate altogether if you don't get to get it off because you've been crowd controlled the entire time. This will increase the resistance to control abilities, giving you a better chance at surviving those crowd controls. Versus if you were looking at a slow burn battle where you need to restore energy every second at a slower pace. The Dark Rune set will increase her attack by 8% after releasing an ultimate, and it can stack, so on boss fights this is going to be the better energy option for you to deal more damage where you don't have to worry about dying. If your only goal in all of this is just to get that one ultimate ability off, the Scarab badge can be all it takes to help boost you to that point. So combining crowd control mitigation with the forest set with the ability of the Scarab badge, we can pretty much ensure that we get that ultimate off 100% of the time. And lastly, as a bonus, not many people consider that a water set can actually be effective on Izanami as well. This increases all shielding and healing abilities by a certain percentage, so this is going to make her heal a lot more throughout the entire duration of the fight. Plus, in addition to that, it will help increase her dodge by 30%, which will indefinitely increase her effectiveness and tankiness throughout the entire fight. Even though it says it's only for 3 seconds, she will be taking away at healing constantly, pretty much giving it for the entire battle. And lastly, let's talk about our damage options between Thunder, Air, and Fire runes. We already talked about how you can combine Air runes with the Magatama in order to get an active skill spamming Izanami. But if you'd rather use the staff, then we're going to be much better off choosing between Fire and Thunder. Fire runes, while they can just straight up increase our damage, they also provide us a crit chance buff for the first 20 seconds of the fight. Now 20 seconds is not a very long time in the beginning of the fight, so the Fire rune will be better suited to short-winded battles where you just need to rely on the RNG of getting a lot of crits in the first 20 seconds to win. Versus if you have a more long-winded fight where you're going to have a lot more chances to deal 135% damage, then this will be better. Not only does this last for the entire duration of the fight, but also you can deal a critical hit with the damage increase of 135% to pretty much get a super crit. But it could be worth noting that these ignore defense. This can be the best way to deal the maximum amount of damage to enemies with a high defense, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of enemies do not have a high defense, and some bosses don't even allow defense to factor into the equation of your damage, making Thunder not good in those situations. So with all of this knowledge, there is probably a few very good builds for Izanami, and I wouldn't put it past anybody to have a set that works better than someone else's in a given situation. But for a catch-all situation, if I just wanted to put some gear and equipment on my Izanami and not to worry about her in the future, then I would probably choose this. I'd bank on the fact that Izanami comes with enough survivability to where we shouldn't have to really worry about putting it in our build too much. We can deal a lot more damage with the staff combined with Thunder Runes, so I use this most of the time. For divinities in a time where I don't want to swap them out, I would mostly rely on Water Drop to reduce crit damage taken by 35% because I expect Izanami to be handling a lot of attacks. In the beginning of the battle, I would take Symbiosis so that we can help ensure we get that game-winning ultimate off, and then I would take Savvy to help increase the damage from our active skills because she can cast them in the direct beginning of the fight. And that is my complete breakdown for an Izanami build for early and mid game. I know that it was a lot more information than you probably bargained for whenever you clicked on the video unless you saw the timestamp. So if you got this far, please feel free to like and subscribe. I make videos all the time, and also you can check the links in the description to join my Discord. Christmas is coming up, and if you forgot to get somebody special a present, please peruse my wife's Etsy shop where she has tasteful artistic photos that you can purchase at your leisure. But other than that, I'm not even gonna edit it. I'm not. Other than that, y'all, that's gonna do it for me today, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.